introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. CJ Messiah, who is the Director of Cyber Technologies and Academic Outreach at the Office of Undersecretary for Defense, Research and Engineering. Mr. Messiah is also the Director of this very program that you are part of, the National Viceroy Program. He will be telling us about Viceroy and his own career in DoD. And it will be something that you would get a chance for those of you who are going to have an internship, maybe to meet him in person. But I have interacted a lot with him. He has been a great, great supporter in addition to being the engine behind this program nationally for our program at CySER. And was also a keynote speaker previous summer workshops we have had. So we've got busy schedule, but I appreciate very much, CJ, you're taking the time to talk to our students today, and we've got a huge crowd here waiting for you to make your remarks. Without any further ado, CJ, please take over. I think you are able to share your screen and get started. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate that. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you great.
Wonderful. And can any of you see me, or are you just seeing my slides? Just wanted to know.
We also see you.
Great. All right. Awesome. Yeah, I can't see many of you, but usually you got about, the computers are pretty well packed. And I really appreciate you all being here today and the honor of being able to kick off your summer week with the CySER seminar. This is just an amazing opportunity for all of you. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey with Washington State University over the past few years as I go through some of my slides here today. You are part of something special. Yes, believe it or not, Washington State University out here in Pullman, along the rolling fields and the farmland. This is something special that's happening out here in developing a cybersecurity program drawn from, the engineering fields and some of the other adjacent programs that you heard about with your director and some of the others this morning. Washington State University was one of our first 3 Viceroy Virtual Institutes back in, I want to say 2021. So you've been with us for 4 years. I've seen many of your prior students in seminars like this. And let me just tell you, they have gone on to do great things. They have done great things to represent not only the Department of Defense, but also our country in cooperation with our international partners. You'll hear a little bit about that later on. You saw a photo of 4 of them sitting in the auditorium there when they were acknowledged as winning the Fall Viceroy Spectral Cloak competition. That was amongst, I think, 19 teams, maybe over 100 competitors in that competition. They went on to represent the U.S. in a Canadian cyber defense competition. Yeah, good stuff, right? So what we do in this program and what we do with the great students we have at Washington State is we make the connection between the academics, the foundation that WSU lays, and the operational application, what you're really going to be doing with these skills in a real operational context or career. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that over the course of the next 40 minutes or so. I'm going to try to leave myself about 10 minutes for Q&A, and I might try to actually end up or wrap up probably around the 10:50 mark there, because I do have another presentation I'm supposed to give at 11. So why don't I move on? I think you can all see my slides. If any of you have questions, I don't know if you are kind of tied into this, but there's a chat room here that I can see. If any of you can see the chat room, then please feel free to ask some questions there along the way. If I see the chat, I'll try to answer when I can. If I don't, we'll queue them up for the end. All right.
So most of the people, CJ, are in the room. And so the people who are online are people like yourself presenting. And so we may not have questions in the chat, but we will make sure to leave some time towards the end so that they can ask questions if they have. So they're physically listening to you.
Thank you. So this here is an outline of my talk today. Who am I, right? Why should you listen to some old guy, right? some guy from the Pentagon. I'm here, you're there, right? What do we have in common? You're going to find out probably a lot more than you expect. I'm going to give you a perspective on the Department of Defense and how it sees cybersecurity and cyber operations and who are our leading cyber threats. So then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing about those threats and how does Viceroy play a role in preparing you to meet those threats. And then I'll take any questions that you have. So I want to tell you a little bit about me. I've been speaking to crowds. Actually, I have been speaking to crowds. But I've been speaking to youngsters about cybersecurity and engineering careers probably for about 30 to 35 years now. When I first started doing this, I was in my 20s and I was the relatable guy. Now I'm the old guy. So now I have to draw a bridge. You know, when you see me, I have to kind of explain, well, how did I get from where you are to where I am? Because where do I work? I work in the Pentagon, right? So what do I do there? Well, we're going to find out a little bit about that. So I don't know where all of you grew up, but I grew up in a very small town, 1,400 some individuals. It was mainly farming, not unlike what you see out around you, but really small time farming, not commercial farming like you saw on your trek for those of you who drove across the state for this thing today. So in that small town, not a lot of resources, a very small school. Our graduating class, I think, was 87 or 91, not too many. But great things can happen in small towns. You're going to find that out in your life. The town I grew up was Waterville, New York, and it was the birthplace of George Eastman of Eastman Kodak, who you're very familiar with that company's name. So good things can happen. A lot can happen in high school when we make investments in high school. So really, you know, my first exposure to computers was a computer just like the one you see here on the screen, that thing that looks like a piece of furniture. It's called the Commodore PET. Your cell phone is probably about 5 million times the processing power of that thing, right? And a lot less expensive. So that thing there sat in the back of my high school room, and we didn't know what to do with it as kids. There was a couple of games loaded on it. Space Invaders was one of them. And so we'd start playing it, right? It drew us in. Then we started learning how to write our own programs. We used to write programs that would pretend to be the cursor. And what we would do is we'd write programs to taunt whoever sat down at the computer. And it went from there, right? You start to get more and more creative. You write surveys, you write other programs, databases, things like that. And you were hooked. You were hooked, right? You get a computer for home, you start programming there. So the thing is that the real, you know, students ask me all the time, how can I be successful? What do I need to do in this computer science field? And the real thing is that you have to be willing to tinker. You got to be curious. You got curious. That curiosity has to drive how you interact with the technology. You can't read it out of a book. Honestly, you cannot do it. It changes too quickly. And they say within 18 or 24 months, you're kind of somewhat irrelevant if you're not keeping up on it. So having that curiosity to, you know, get an old beat up laptop computer, install an operating system on it, blow it away, put another one on, blow it away, put some virtual machines on, play around with them, blow them away, get Kali Linux, get those tools on there, start experimenting. That's really how you get good. If you've got that drive, great. If you don't have that drive yet, well, that's what you're sitting here for, honestly, to help connect your interest in the field, potentially, to a real career, something that will drive you forward. So your director of your School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, he asked you a few minutes ago, why are you here in this class? Some of you kind of knew the answer. Some of you maybe don't know the answer. That's okay. But the reason that you're here will help you find that answer. All right, show of hands. How many of you are like rising juniors or seniors? Any here? There's a few of you, right? Do you remember your weed out classes? the big lecture halls where you do math or science, or whatever. Like, do you ever remember anybody talking about that student to the left or student to the right that may not be there in 2 or 3 years? I don't know. Maybe you guys are all good. But I went to Rochester Institute of Technology. It was an intimidating place. And they asked us, or they told us that, hey, you're starting the program as a freshman. Those 2 students won't be here by the time you graduate. Well, oh my goodness, I better work hard. Working hard was part of it. It wasn't everything. Working hard, it was really curiosity that really would drive you through the rest of the program. And the reason that the student to the left and student to the right weren't there in a few years was because they weren't sure why they were there to begin with. Think about it, right? Think about it when you chose to go into this field. Did people tell you it was a good field, or did you figure it out for yourself? Some of you might have figured it out for yourself. But some of you are still maybe a little bit on the fence. Somebody told you it was good. Maybe you don't quite own it yet. This is what this experience here over the next week is going to help you with. You're going to help see the connection between what you are learning in your classes and how that applies to practical national security challenges. And if you don't leave this week excited about this, then we'll have to work on you a little bit more, or maybe this isn't for you. But I have a feeling you're going to really be interested after the week. You've got a great lineup. I've been taking a look at the folks from industry who are going to be talking to you. The folks at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center are going to be here later today, and so on and so forth. This is a golden opportunity. There's been a couple of times so far where the speakers here have asked if you have any questions. Please ask them questions. We are here for you, you only. I'm retiring in 4 years. Okay, the reason I'm here is for you, because I want to retire. I want you folks to come and start a career in this field, so I can, finally say, hey, I've left this field in better hands than when I came into it. And based on what I've been seeing out of Washington State University, I know I'm leaving it in better hands. I'm very proud of all of you. I could end this talk right here. Honestly, I could. Right here, I could end it. Right? So that's just kind of the background, folks, right? So really, it's about curiosity. It's about lifelong learning. In this field, if you don't keep on top of things, you will start falling behind. I have been working for the federal government now for 36 years. 36 years. Concurrently, what you don't know about me is I worked in academia for 20 years too. So I've taught about 80 sections of different classes and things like that. And there was nothing that prepared me more than having to teach this, because you have to know your stuff, because there's curious students who are going to call you out if you don't know what you're talking about. So this was all good, good experience to me. Never give up on lifelong learning. And then finally, also your director talked a little bit about the need to have good communication skills and leadership. I think he said communication skills. I'm going to add leadership on that. So my own experience in this is that I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not in cybersecurity. So you say, how did I get here? I'm a cybersecurity technical director for the department. I got there because I started out in electrical engineering, oddly enough, because I had a pretty good technical mind, but I am an introvert. You will not know that by the time we're done talking here. And when I go over on my time and my PA person who's listening and on us rolls her eyes, right? You will not know that, because I've overcome this. I've overcome this through practice. I became an electrical engineer because I was an introvert and all I wanted to do was solve problems. And if somebody stuffed the problem under my door, I would solve it and stuff it back out. It doesn't work that way. It's all about teamwork, communication, and leadership skills. Almost nothing will be solved or invented by a single individual. And even if you do, if you can't get out and communicate and light passion in people about, you can get them excited about your idea, they won't invest in it, they won't buy it. So the thing is that all these things are very important skills to be pursuing as well. So in your education, get involved in a speaking class, take every opportunity you can to present a poster, give an abstract for your research paper, do all these things. Volunteer to go on the road and go in some sort of, research competition. You'll find that these experiences are invaluable. And then when you have that first interview with a company or the government, you'll feel so much more confident. Okay, so that is that. Now I'm going to speed things up a little bit. Now I talked a little bit about some lessons between me and you. Okay. So where am I now? 36 years in the Department of Defense. I started out as an intern. They eventually hired me. I've done just about every job from a bench scientist, program manager, branch chief, managing people, portfolio manager, and then finally working at the Pentagon as a portfolio overall Department of Defense portfolio manager for about $500 million worth of science and technology. Cool stuff. Get to know the Army, Navy, Air Force, NSA, DARPA, what they're all doing. And we developed strategic plans. One crazy thing I had to do is they asked me if to develop a 25-year science and technology roadmap. Like, what is science and technology going to look like in cyber 25 years from now? That is crazy. I mean, heck, only 20 years ago or less than 20 years ago, we didn't know that we would need these things, so that these things would be prevalent. And look how they've changed our lives. So anyway, really crazy things we do up there. So as I said, I'm kind of near the end of my career, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that I am preparing the pathway for talent. So I run 3 programs. One is Viceroy, which you heard about. There's another one, which is kind of like a mini Viceroy. I run it out in the state of Hawaii. It's called the Pacific Intelligence Innovation Initiative, or P3I. So they're looking for people who want to come out there and live in Hawaii, maybe have a career out there, stay out there, live out there. If there's any of you who are interested in that, let us know. Maybe a little too late this summer, but next summer we're going to be taking applications as soon as August or September for the next internship season. Of all the states here in the United States, you're one of the 3 closest ones to Hawaii, easiest to make the trip. Okay, so let's go on. This is where I work. You've probably seen a picture like this before. I work for what they call the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. It's the Chief Technology Officer of the department. Our goal is to make sure that the Department of Defense never fights a fair fight. As I say, never bring a knife to a knife fight. So our goal is to have the best information technology as well as kinetic technology that we can ideally maintain defense. And we do this in 14 key technology areas. One of those is called integrated sensing and cyber. Sound familiar? And what that means is it's how do we explore how cyberspace is going to evolve, how we can harness that, but also when it comes to sensing, we're thinking about electromagnetic spectrum. Some of you have heard that term before, maybe some not so much. And if we think about how computers have evolved over the last 30 or 40 years, 40 years, you didn't have a computer connected to the internet unless it had a wire. Now things are almost pervasively wireless. And when things don't run well with your computer, it may not be a computer problem. It might be a comms problem. So understanding how electromagnetic spectrum works, waveforms, and how those things propagate are kind of almost hand in hand with computer science, like data science would be. Okay. So if any of you are thinking of taking maybe a basic physics course on radio frequency and propagation, it's probably just as important as taking a keyboarding course in terms of something you'll use again and again. Okay, so let's talk about some cyber threats that the DoD worries about. Let's start first. When we're talking about cyber, we almost never say cyberspace. We say, oh yeah, I'm taking a degree in cyber, or maybe cyber defense or something like it. What is cyber? What does it even mean? We almost don't question anymore. We have this picture in our mind about what cyber is. But what we could possibly do is if we think about cyber as being a shortening of the word cyberspace, there's many different definitions. We might call it a global domain consisting of interdependent networks of information technology and resident data, including the internet, telecommunications controllers, computer systems, and embedded processors and controllers. So everything from a watch that connects to a signal and keeps my watch, in time, this is in cyberspace. Anything that has a digital controller in it, like your car, it's in cyberspace. There's really nothing, practically speaking, that's ever air-gapped anymore. So then we've got cybersecurity, which is the program you're in. We have cyber operations, which is the active defense and projection of effects in cyberspace. We have resilience of cyberspace, which is the design of a system to be able to absorb an attack and still maintain the desired function of the device it's integrated in, such as a power station or your car. We'll get into the car. I keep using the car. I'm going to tell you some things that are going to make you scared by the time you walk out of here today. Okay. So this is maybe one picture of what cyberspace looks like. This is from what we call our joint publication 3-12, how the Department of Defense defines cyberspace. You'll see stuff in your textbooks that look kind of like this too, right? So we think about us, we are users of information systems. That's us up at the top. We have identities. My name is CJ, right? But when I log onto a system, I may have 30 or not 30, I may have about 150 different accounts. Every account that I log into, it's a different persona, whether I'm social media, email, personal accounts, business accounts, things like that. And then how those systems connect to do business, that's the logical layer, the actual devices that they run over, the physical layer, and then where those things are located in the world or not in the world, maybe in space, is the geographics. And all these things are constantly moving. 20 years ago, with the Internet Mapping Project, Bill Cheswick said every year, first of all, you can't map the whole internet. Okay, it's like taking a slow speed picture of somebody running. They're always like, right? As you're taking the picture, things are already moving. And back then, 30% of the internet changed every year. I can't even imagine what it is. It's probably 80% of it changes every year now. So the thing is, we're not going to ever map this thing. And this is why operations in cyberspace are difficult. We don't have good situation awareness of the whole thing. We can't see the whole thing and the relationship of real people like us to these other layers and how we're using them is complex and constantly dynamic. Ultimately, it's people that use the internet. It's people that use cyberspace. And let's wag the dog a little bit. Ultimately, it's people who are the target of malicious actors in cyberspace. The ultimate goal is to affect an individual. Let's not forget that. So some of the challenges in cyberspace is that there's an intelligent person there, or people, or AI now that's acting against us, and that the systems that they're using are fairly inexpensive. We're not talking about, nation state, world powers, colliding with each other where everybody has to have billion-dollar weapons or things like that. We're talking about a $200 Chromebook. We're talking about $25 Raspberry Pi. That's what it takes to get in the game and possibly really wreak havoc with industrial control systems, vehicles, weapon systems, our identity online in web servers and things like that. So anybody can get into it. It's constantly moving around, as I was telling you about, right? It's software-defined everything, hardware, software. They all share the same infrastructure, so they're held in common. So it's kind of difficult for us, like in Department of Defense, to know, well, that's a DoD target. We can go after that. But no, that's a civilian target. We shouldn't go after that. Can't tell. I mean, the thing is, you might be engaging some sort of server somewhere that has different virtual stacks of, this is the hospital's data system, and this is Google's data system, and this is the foreign government's military data system. It's crazy. So this is why sometimes planning in cyberspace takes a long time. And we're moving everything to cyberspace too. That's the hard thing. Like critical infrastructures, some of them were never designed to be connected to the internet, and this is why they're easy targets. And it's why they're the targets of countries like what you see here, right? Russia, the black energy attack set. We're hearing about China, right? So of these countries, right? Show of hands, who thinks that Russia is the most dangerous country of all of these here? Show of hands. How about China? Show of hands. Okay. How about Russia again? I want to do Russia, see if anybody changed their mind. Anyone? Okay. So Russia's dangerous because they're kind of like a teenager, right? They're impulsive. They're going to try all sorts of crazy things, right? In some ways, they're really pushing the envelope. But the thing is, they're kind of short-term. They're tactical. They're short-term thinkers. China's the one to watch out for because they think strategically. They think long-term. They're very careful in what they do. And then they're using all instruments of power: economic, diplomatic, informational, military, cyber. And what we're seeing over time is we're going from, I'll go down to the next chart here. What we're seeing, and this is really the bottom line at the bottom, right? From 2008 to current time, which is not here on the chart, it started out with hacking, defense industrial contractor, defense industrial based contractors, medical systems, identity theft, things like that. We saw a lot of that. And now what's happening is as the art has been perfected, many of these countries are now lurking in critical infrastructures, lurking in our vehicles, lurking in other, now even lurking in our supply chain. So not supply chain of goods that are delivered, but our software supply chain. So we don't really know. In fact, maybe nobody in the world really knows when they go to use a piece of software where it came from. Maybe they don't really know if there's somebody lurking in their system, just ready to exact retribution on us. If we take an action in one domain, will they shut down our computers in a different domain? So holding these critical infrastructures and supply chains at risk are the future. This is where we really need to be focusing a lot of our effort. If we take a look way over here on the right-hand side, right? Many of you are familiar with SolarWinds, right? Okay. So the thing is that, it's not like when I was younger, right? You go buy a piece of software, it's in the shrink-wrapped box at the store, and I come home and that's the disk, right? I mean, I got to worry about supply chain anyway, but the thing is nowadays, software is all licensed to us. It's a steady supply and update, right? Whether it's on a mobile device or a computer, and whoever's in charge of that supply chain is in charge of us. And maybe even if the company itself is a reputable company, if you have a bad actor within that company, they can be putting a small little software tool in there that becomes, at best, an Easter egg, and at worst, it might be something that cripples you. What we're going to be seeing, and we're going to talk a little bit about AI and ML here, right? But we're seeing, going from, data exfiltration attacks, ransomware attacks, and things like that, to more precision targeting. We're seeing that our emails are more clever. The ones that are using to target us, they use a little bit more personal information about us. They're becoming increasingly hard to detect. What we're seeing is also an increase in adversarial experimentation and rehearsal on our critical infrastructure, influence operations, and in vehicles, logistics, and supply chain. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about those with you folks. So this looks like a curious map, right? You see all this red, yellow, and green. Focus on the gray for a minute. The gray is actually the land, right? So this is United States, and America is over on the left. We got Asia on the right. And what we see in the red, that's the ocean. In fact, that's a density map showing where all the ships go across the globally through an application called marine traffic. And over time, it just integrates this and turns it red. So you can see where the most prevalent shipping routes are because they're darker red. And some will actually look like lines. Look all the way over on the left-hand side. That's Taiwan. The Strait of Taiwan is probably the darkest ever. The reason why is 50% of the world's cargo passes through that. 80% of the US's cargo logistics comes from shipping. And we can only live, about 3 or 4 days on this just-in-time shipping thing before it starts affecting us. If you're a state like Hawaii, maybe less. If you're there in the port of Seattle, you'll see things happen pretty quickly around there too. Things will go downhill pretty quick. So shipping is important. Protecting shipping and having freedom of navigation is important. Not just for Department of Defense, but for all of you and your way of life. Maritime attacks are becoming more prevalent. We've seen a few wacky things happen, right? We saw that ship hit the bridge in Baltimore, right? That bridge is going to be down for several more years. It affected all commerce coming into Baltimore for some period of time till they got the bridge removed. But could you imagine we could do the same thing with a digital threat, right? We could also shut down the ports. We could prevent trucks from going in and out of ports. There could be malicious attacks against our cranes. Our cranes can't load and unload cargo. Maybe that's all the examples that you see here at the top in green. These examples over the past few years. There was one called the NotPetya virus, right? So this is ransomware that found its way over on Maersk's shipping network and disabled over 40,000 of their computers worldwide. And maybe about 4,000 servers. And the only way they recovered was because they had 4 computers that were down on the day of the attack. And those 4 computers were used to rebuild the entire network. Crazy, crazy stuff. So these things, we're just on the edge. We're just, a short distance away from, apocalyptic problems if these attacks occur. And that's on the port side of things. Then you've got the ships themselves. These ships do curious things, right? We lost control of the ship. I wonder why. Was it malicious or was it bad maintenance? I don't know. Look what happened with the ship there, the Mexican ship that hit the Brooklyn Bridge over the weekend. It lost power. Why? I'm not saying it was a cyber attack, but you can see how quickly things can devolve. And these can happen from GPS jamming, AIS spoofing, and sometimes an attack right on the navigational systems inside the ship itself. And we're not hearing a lot about these kind of things because, honestly, we don't monitor these things. We typically monitor enterprise IT systems. We typically monitor, that's what most of our stuff monitors. But we're not monitoring cars. We're not monitoring boats. We're not monitoring critical infrastructure because they're embedded systems. We don't have intrusion detection systems on airplanes. Some people say we should. Others say maybe we should design them well to begin with so that they are resilient. Our vehicles. So many of you drove into town for the seminar or drove across town for the seminar. Your vehicle is a rolling data center. A new Ford F-150 has well over 100 million lines of code. By comparison, your cell phone has less. The lunar lander only had 63,000 on it. So, and these things produce maybe a gigabyte of data per hour. That's a lot. And this is going to be a trend that continues. And this data is being shipped off the vehicle, and patterns of life about you are being observed by the original equipment manufacturer. In fact, the data about the patterns of life of how you use the vehicle are actually more valuable than the cost of the car itself. There's some in the industry that are saying cars should almost be free because of the value of the data stream that comes off of these things. They're hard to secure today. They're going to be harder to secure tomorrow. Today, we have 30 to 100 electronic control units in the car. We're converging on something that looks more like a Tesla, which has maybe one or two computers in there, and everything runs on those computers, and you have to have real-time operating systems that really work and are fault tolerant. Where does the data go? As I said, some of the data about the pattern of life goes back to original equipment manufacturers. They go back to Sirius XM. They go back to a whole bunch of different places. But on your car, you have all sorts of antennas, tire pressure monitoring system, again, your radio, all sorts of stuff. And then you've got all these proximity sensors too. Every one of those things may have to accept malicious digital input, and some of them don't do it so well. And it's a way of getting access to the car. So this smart cars are going to be connecting to smart infrastructure. And it's possible that a malicious car that has malicious malware on it could connect through a charging station to affect a power grid or other things like that. So it's kind of scary. Again, our cars are no longer air-gapped. The reason we should be worrying about this, and we hear a lot about trade imbalances, right? We've been hearing about trade imbalances for a long time. We've been hearing about putting tariffs on Chinese goods for a long time. And we're saying, why do we really need to do that? You know, yeah, is this really all about just protecting Detroit? It is, but it isn't. It's really about it's really about where does the data go? If it's a US manufacturer, the data stays in the US and under our data privacy laws. If the manufacturer is in China, then very much like the DJI, the data goes back to China. Can you imagine a more efficient data collection machine on the patterns of life of US citizens by a whole bunch of Chinese manufactured cars or cars with Chinese components collecting on you everywhere you go? Maybe it's anonymized, but we've shown with AI and ML algorithms, we can pretty much figure out, even if we don't know the start point and end point, we can still figure out who you are. This is part of the national security problem or channel risk behind why we want to procure vehicles that we know where the data stream's going. And because, I think I got to do another click here. Forgive me, folks. So because the US military vehicles are based on the same technology as commercial vehicles, such as the CAN bus, J1939 interfaces, and things like that, when something is not secure in the commercial world, it's not secure either necessarily for our military craft, in cars and things like that. So this is a shared problem. It's our interest to invest in industry. And if you're working in the automotive industry, you're working in the boating industry, the critical infrastructure industry, you're actually doing great things for national security. You may not realize it, may not feel like it, but that's why all these different industries, that we expose you to in Viceroy and CySER, the reason we do that is we want to show you there's many ways to good. So let me just kind of finish up the threats a little bit here. We're talking about supply chain here. Take a look at this chart here. It's a few years old, but it shows that the #1 ranking worldwide for production of lithium-ion batteries is China, 80% of it. The US is a distant second at 6%, and the rest of the world is even further back. This is why sometimes you hear about why it's important for the US to have leadership or enhanced capability in lithium-ion, because it's not necessarily just powering our phones or powering our cars, but we're using lithium-ion batteries now as backup power sources for power stations. It's pretty crazy. Microelectronics, we all remember coming out of COVID, nobody could buy a car because they were so expensive because our chips are sourced overseas. And until we solve the problem with most of the manufacturing happening in Taiwan, Taiwan's going to be one of those countries that we want to defend. When you buy a semiconductor, it doesn't just go from Taiwan to you, but it actually starts many times in design either in Europe or the US, and then it goes through all sorts of different testing, then fabrication and test again, and then packaging, and then putting in a device. So your supply chain can be disrupted in many different places. So now think about those ships being disrupted, right? It's not necessarily delivery of product, but it could really interrupt early stages of your supply chain very profoundly. With some people say we need to be manufacturing more things in the US. We do. We used to, when it comes to electronics, we used to manufacture 37% of the global supply. We now only manufacture 12%, but we use 25%. And 50% of our semiconductors are non-domestic. So we need to be able to validate these semiconductors that come over, make sure there's not malicious hardware in them or malicious logic in them. So what are we going to be doing about these cyber threats? So in terms of operations, many of you are familiar with US Cyber Command. I was not really aware of what a combatant command was when I was younger, when I was in college. I knew there was the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and I knew they defended our country. But they actually just grow people. They grow people, they grow their skills, their cyber skills, their other skills, and then they present forces to a combatant command. And then you either have geographical commands that work in a particular area, or you've got functional commands that do a specific thing. Cyber Command is a command that does a specific thing. And it defends DoD network systems and information. It defends the US homeland and US national interests. And this is when we hear about election security. It's when we hear about cleanup after a cyber attack against critical infrastructure and things like that. Cyber Command is helping out with that. And then we have cyber operational support to military operations. I'll tell you something. Today and in the past, we have what we call kinetic operations. You know, hey, we're going to drop a bomb on something. We're going to have a ship interdict this particular situation. So right now we use physical things in warfare or defense, and we support it with cyber. 5 years from now, by the time we get to 2030, that's going to be reversed. Most of our interactions with the rest of the world, they're going to be cyber related primarily, and all the time there's going to be these skirmishes and cat and mouse games with cyber. And we will be bringing in physical machinery only when we have to. That's how things are changing. So you can go work for a cyber command like this, and they've got 6,600 people dispersed across Hawaii, Texas, Georgia, Fort Meade, other places around the world. You can do that as a military person. You can do it as a civilian. You can do it as part of the National Guard. You can do it in cooperation with them, with Department of Homeland Security or CISA. You can do it in industry, either as a contractor for those organizations, or you can do it in the better design of some of those systems that I was showing you earlier. No talk would be complete without talking about AI and ML. It's really affected the field of cybersecurity and cyber operations. We're seeing that cyber operations are getting quicker. Speed is life. The ability to develop software, test it, deploy it, or the ability to analyze an adversary system, build something, and then deploy that. Machine learning and AI are helping out tremendously with those kind of things. Also for influence operations. There's not a person in this room that doesn't know what a deep fake is, I presume, and if you do, go read about it. Okay, but I'm sure you do. Okay, they're audio, they're video, they're all sorts of things. So the pedigree of what it is we see and make decisions on are very, very important. Remember, what did I tell you the target of cyber operations was? The person, right? This is why influence operations are so effective, because you can affect the adversary's will to act. And that's why we need to be careful about these things. Some people will say free speech is free speech. Maybe that's the case, right? I'm just going to ask you to form your own opinions about that. I'm not here to lecture you one way or another. I'm a former educator. I have my own ideas about these kind of things. But back in World War One, we were drafting people in the U.S. to go fight in Europe, and there was a guy named by the name of Schenck who would put these demonstrations out in front of recruiting centers to prevent people from going into the recruiting center. And he was arrested because he was interfering with a national security event where we were needing to recruit. And he sued. He sued the government. He says, I have a right to free speech. And this went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled eventually against Schenck. And they said, well, it's true. You have a right to free speech to the extent that it doesn't harm other people. In this case, you're harming national security because this is a national security interest. It's why they say you don't have the right to shout fire in a crowded theater. So this becomes difficult when we get to the digital domain. You're going to find all sorts of people arguing on both sides that we shouldn't have censorship, we shouldn't have filtering, and they're right. And you have others that say, but you can't have harmful speech either, and they're right too. And this is going to be one of the key focal points that you're going to be living in and that you will have to help make decisions about. So any of you who are thinking of going into cyber policy or cyber AI and ML, this is the world, this is how you're going to be spending your careers working in this area. All right, I can't get my slides to advance. I'm going to keep going on and just finish up with what is Viceroy now, right? So or CySER for that matter, right? So what we're seeing is that I've just introduced you to a number of critical national security issues. They're growing, they're evolving. It's not just cyber, but there's some adjacent areas such as machine learning, data science, cryptography, policy, electromagnetic spectrum. These are all new battlegrounds for strategic competition, to include what we call influence or operations in the information environment, or influence operations. So what we need, going back to what I was telling you about having a really smart person, but they also have to be a communicator and a leader. These are the kind of things we're building in the CySER and Viceroy programs. And what we're doing here is by preparing you and helping you understand what you're working toward, helping you better put forth your efforts in a fruitful way when you're going through your studies, when you're going through competitions, exercises, research papers, posters, elevator speeches, and things like that. You'll have a better perspective on why what you're doing makes a difference. So why Viceroy? I'm just going to start out within the Department of Defense itself. We have 19,000 open cyber positions that need to be filled. We don't know how many electromagnetic spectrum positions ought to be filled. And I can tell you in the countrywide, there's probably about 500 or 600,000 positions that are open in industry and government. So that's not going away. But take a look at this graphic here, right? Hiring managers are not just looking for those blue skills in the middle that look kind of technical. They're looking for problem-solving abilities, teamwork, communication too. And this is why programs like Viceroy are important. So we are a mission-focused cyber spectrum leadership development pathway. So we're trying to accelerate the ability of our graduates to have the foundational skills they need, exercise them through experiential learning, and then apply those practically through internships. Those are our three core things. And you're part of Washington State University is part of a network of about 48 schools and counting across the country that are helping us fill these critical cyber and spectrum skills. So you would be able, when you come into work, to work for one of these organizations, you would be able to succeed on day one. At a glance, these are the components of Viceroy. 48 schools, there's 1,700 scholars across the country who call themselves Viceroy, just like you here in this room. Our pipeline extends from high school through graduate school. We focus on ROTC as well. We have a strong connection to ROTC units across the country. We focus also on the mission, both in our competitions, and I have a slide on that. We have two internships that you heard about earlier, Maven, which is a 8-week, I call it a boot camp, a leadership and technology boot camp. This is the one that's in Rome, New York, but we also have it in NIWC PAC, Naval Information Warfare Center, Pacific in San Diego. We also have another one at the Army Research Laboratory in Adelphi. And then the reason we have that program is for rising sophomores who may not have many core courses under the belt yet, but want to have an internship experience. This helps them learn what it is to be a researcher. It helps accelerate their knowledge of cyber and electromagnetic spectrum capabilities, helps them be better communicators, helps them better understand how the DoD works, how to be a better citizen, how to understand national security problems more effectively. The follow-on internship called Envoy, those are at like 17 sites across the country. Those are more like your traditional internship program you're familiar with. And then we also have a bridge program to help get you into the employment afterwards with the Department of Defense. So I think I've talked about these three things here. You heard from the doctor there earlier about the SFS scholarship. Washington State University is also pursuing designation as a National Center of Academic Excellence in cybersecurity, I think cyber defense. And
yes,
upon achieving that designation would also qualify you for something called the Cyber Service Academy Scholarship that has many of the same features too. More to follow on that. That's particularly of importance for those of you who may be freshmen or sophomores, because that designation may be awarded by the time you get to be juniors or seniors. Competitions, there was somebody I think asked early on, are there going to be, or do you offer like hackathons and things like that? Hackathons are important. They're interesting, right? So you got your skills you learn in class, right? Then you have, CTFs, hackathons, you've got certifications, all that kind of stuff. They say that they kind of demonstrate that you have some skills here and there, like you can apply some of your skills. What we do is we offer in the Viceroy, Dr. Boom, Spectral Cloak, and some of the things that's going to happen in October. We offer you a mission problem that says you need to accomplish this, and cyberspace is one component of it. And you have to figure out as a team how to plan, brief, execute, and then debrief. The problems that we solve are bigger than any one student. They require teamwork. And we find that the winners of these challenges are usually the learn-it-alls and not necessarily the know-it-alls. The know-it-alls tend not to communicate as much, believe it or not. So of our competitions here, the Spectral Cloak, Washington State University won last year. We're very proud of them. They competed they served as the red team against the Canadian Network Operations Center during an exercise called CyberX that was held at the U.S. Naval Research Academy and the what the heck is the name? The National Military College in Kingston, Ontario. So the students competed remotely. They could have competed in person, perhaps. They were good enough to serve as aggressors. We're very proud that they participated in this. We'd like to see some of you in our competition next year, which will take place in October as well. So as you enter into classes late August and early September, start putting together a team. These are our institutions across the country. I'm not going to dwell on this because we're short on time. These are internship sites across the country as well. And you'll get a copy of these slides afterwards here. Would you like to learn more about Viceroy? You can connect with us at Viceroy Scholars on Instagram, LinkedIn, and also, I guess, on Discord too. There's a lot of features of the program, particularly for those of you who are in the Viceroy Scholar pipeline. There's something called Scholar Resources. that will help you learn more about internship opportunities, an intro to how USA Jobs works, how to write a federal resume, and most importantly, too, we have students who are now graduating from the Viceroy program and going into the workplace, and they're part of our alumni network. And so this is how to get involved in the alumni network and just keep track on what our scholars are doing. Or if you've got something you're proud of and you want to talk about, we'd love to hear about it too, so we can lift you up. That brings us to our alumni event. For those of you who are students in the program, our alumni event is going to be on Wednesday, May 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. We'd love to have you register for the program or for the event. And you're going to hear from some of your fellow students who have went to work in government, industry, who are entrepreneurs, and hear their stories. And maybe give you a little inspiration in helping either make that final decision on a career or maybe even help you find a job. And I think that's it. I think that brings us to the end. You've been a wonderful audience. And at this point, I would take any questions that you may have. And of course, there's a QR code here if you want to take a photo of that to take you right to our website.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, CJ. That was an excellent presentation in many ways. You did make a case for Viceroy in a good way, and many of the topics that you touched on were also going to be topics that would show up throughout the week. And so thank you very much for doing that. And it came clear to me that you have made use of your academia background. There were slides with definitions of things and things like that that I think will be a helpful resource. So I appreciate that you'll be sharing the slides. When you get the clearance, we'll make them up on our website. I know you have to run, and let me tell you how the room looks like. You don't see them, but every time you were asking questions, there were a lot of nodes, and they were raising hands in terms of participation. And outside, it is sunny. We're going to probably be raining later in the day, but that's what the things look like here. I wish it was in person so you could see them. I'll open up the floor if there are any questions for CJ. We have a few minutes before the top of the hour, so
I'd be happy to take some questions. And yes, I did get a chance to see the students. So thank you so much for putting the camera that way. And by the way, I love your tie.
Oh, thank you. I have to have the right tie for the right day today. So just for disclaimer, in campus, when you see me around, you will rarely see me in tie. So this is one of the exceptions. So the rest of the week, maybe you will see me in shorts too. So any questions for CJ?
Anything. You can ask me anything. DoD careers, education, whatever you want.
If you can stand up, maybe can hear you, but otherwise.
Hi, CJ. I'm wondering, what is the process of our college getting designated as a Center for Excellence? What does that entail? How can the student body help put our best foot forward?
I think you were asking a question, if I understood, what's the process for obtaining a National Center of Excellence designation? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So so the typical process is a school first has to kind of demonstrate some longevity or commitment to the cybersecurity field. So you will have a series of courses that you'll put together. You will have an attendance record showing the students have participated in those courses, that you have some stability in terms of your instructors who are leading the course design and delivery. WSU has all of those things on its own, and certainly through its participation within Viceroy. So what WSU has done is it has submitted an application to the National Security Agency designation program. They'll review the application. They provide feedback and comments. Asafal and I, we've actually talked a little bit about this. Hopefully, we've gotten over some of the bumps on that. If not, please let me know. I would be happy to continue to help you folks. But I could think of no school worthier than the cyber defense designation than WSU.
Thank you, CJ. So just to update you, we did have an application for cyber defense, which falls short of the thing that is normally required in terms of how old are you, and we argued that we are old enough. then that's pending. But another thing we have applied for this spring is for the cyber research designation, and we are waiting to hear about that. There is a delay in the review process, but we are now pursuing 12 those. And that's just a quick update. But that's an excellent question. The club is doing a wonderful job, and so it kind of reflects in what we say in these applications, and so that's helpful. Other questions for CJ? I know he has to go to a meeting very soon, so yeah.
You briefly touched on how critical infrastructure affects military operations. What do you think of the civilian group DEF CON and its intertwinedness with DoD?
So I heard maybe two questions there. What is the
Yes.
interconnectivity between critical infrastructure and Department of Defense? And the second question was what?
What is your opinion on DEF CON and its commitment to exploring the role of cybersecurity?
DEF CON? Yeah. So look, we have critical infrastructures we rely upon all the time, all of us, right? So a global positioning system is probably one of them. Telecommunications networks such as our cell phone services and priority communication systems like that. So very much, if you could just imagine being without your phone for a day at all, okay? Yeah, I know, brings you to tears, right? So just imagine being out without a few days. Think about the impact of not knowing where our logistics are, where our positions are, where it would be a profound problem. Actually, without telecommunications timing on cell phone towers, actually that would affect a whole bunch of other things. Oh, let me take it back. GPS. GPS is the thing that takes everything down. Because without GPS, you don't have telecommunications timing, so therefore your cell phones don't work. And power systems, they can't synchronize. It's a variety, it's a cascading effect. So having independent, there's some discussion about bringing power systems actually inside the gate of bases so that we're less dependent upon critical infrastructure outside of the baseline. But that doesn't help us with GPS. So having alternate position navigation and timing capabilities or inertial sensors to help get us through times in which we're going through GPS jamming are kind of critical for that. What's the role of DEF CON? Do I think that that's important? Absolutely. Because the thing is that, to be honest, cybersecurity is an industry. And I don't know how many of you, get that little thing down the bottom of your screen that says, hey, McAfee's found this, it's found that, it's found that. And then you go to click on it, and then you got to pay the money to learn more or remove it, right? So they are in the business of kind of whetting your appetite for paying insurance for things you're not sure you need. DEF CON happens to be the thing that really brings it home to show you, yeah, you need to worry about these things. And sometimes they're the disruptors with commercial industry that maybe commercial industry didn't think there was a return on investment in fixing something. But when it gets out there and it's done in a ethical manner, right, it can help properly motivate the security industry to take care of things that they probably should have had better planned in their business model to begin with. So it's a good thing. Visit DEF CON. Be responsible. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we should let CJ go, and I think this will be a good place to stop. Thank you very much, CJ, for the keynote today, and you will see some of the students later.
Thank you. Thanks, students, for participating in this. This is going to be a great week for you.
All right.
All right. Take care,
All right.
folks. I'm going to sign out.
Thank you.